Adam and Eve, the beginning of humanity. Have you ever wondered how everything began? How the first humans came to be, and why the world is the way it is? This is the ancient and timeless story of Adam and Eve, the first man and woman whose choices shaped the destiny of all humanity. Our story begins in the very first pages of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, where we are taken back to the dawn of time. Before the stars were hung in the sky or the seas rolled upon the earth, there was God, the Creator. With His words, He brought the universe into existence. Light pierced the darkness, waters gathered, dry land appeared, and life began to teem across the earth. He filled the sky with birds, the seas with fish, and the land with all manner of animals. And it was good. But something was missing. Creation was not yet complete. God had a plan to create a being unlike any other, a creature in His own image, someone who could think, feel, and have a relationship with Him. And so, on the sixth day of creation, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." God formed the first man, Adam, from the dust of the ground. With His own breath, He breathed life into Adam's nostrils, and Adam became a living being, created in the image of God, bearing the likeness of the Creator in mind, soul, and spirit. The Garden of Eden, paradise on earth. God placed Adam in a magnificent paradise known as the Garden of Eden. This was not just any ordinary garden. It was a place of perfect peace and beauty, where everything Adam needed was provided for him. The garden was filled with lush trees bearing fruit, sparkling rivers, and vibrant life. In the middle of the garden stood two very special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God gave Adam a clear command. He told him that he was free to eat from any tree in the garden except for one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, God warned, you will certainly die. Although Adam lived in a perfect world and had a close relationship with God, something was still missing. Adam was alone. He had no companion who was like him, no one to share his thoughts, dreams, or the beauty of the garden with. God saw this and said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." So God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. As Adam slept, God took one of his ribs and from it fashioned the first woman, Eve. When Adam woke up and saw her, he exclaimed with joy, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Eve was the perfect companion for Adam, and together they lived in harmony, tending to the garden and walking with God. The temptation, the serpent's deception. For a time, Adam and Eve lived in complete innocence and bliss, enjoying their relationship with each other and with God. But the peace of Eden was soon shattered by a dark force. Enter the serpent, a cunning and deceitful creature. The Bible tells us that this serpent was none other than Satan in disguise, who sought to turn Adam and Eve away from God. One day, as Eve was near the forbidden tree, the serpent approached her and began to speak. "Did God really say, 'You must not eat from any tree in the garden?'" the serpent asked, twisting God's words. Eve replied, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, 'You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die.'" The serpent, seeing his opportunity, boldly lied to her, saying, "You will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The serpent's words struck a chord in Eve's heart. She looked at the fruit, how beautiful and delicious it seemed, and the idea of becoming wise like God tempted her deeply. Without thinking about the consequences, Eve reached out, plucked the fruit from the tree, and ate it. Then she gave some to Adam, who was with her, and he too ate the fruit. The fall, consequences of disobedience. In that moment, everything changed. Adam and Eve's eyes were opened, just as the serpent had said, but it wasn't the glorious wisdom they had hoped for. Instead, they were flooded with a sense of shame and fear. For the first time, they realized they were naked, exposed not just physically, but spiritually as well. They quickly sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves, but no covering could hide what they had done. Later, when they heard the sound of God walking in the garden, Adam and Eve hid among the trees, fearful of facing their Creator. God, of course, knew what had happened, but he called out to Adam, "Where are you?" Adam replied, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." God asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam, instead of taking responsibility, pointed to Eve and said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." When God asked Eve what she had done, she too shifted the blame, saying, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." The disobedience of Adam and Eve was a turning point for all of humanity. Their choice to eat from the forbidden tree had far-reaching consequences. Sin had entered the world, bringing with it pain, suffering, and death. The perfect relationship between God and humanity was broken. God's judgment and promise. God, in his justice, pronounced judgment upon Adam, Eve, and the serpent. To the serpent he said, "Cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." This was the first promise of a coming Savior who would one day defeat Satan and sin. To Eve, God said that her pain in childbirth would greatly increase, and her relationship with Adam would now have struggle and difficulty. To Adam, God declared that the ground would be cursed because of his disobedience, and he would have to toil and sweat to produce food. Life, which had once been filled with peace and ease, was now marked by hardship. And finally, the worst consequence of all, death. God said to Adam, "By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden, no longer able to enjoy the paradise God had created for them. To prevent them from eating from the tree of life and living forever in their sinful state, God placed cherubim with a flaming sword to guard the entrance to the garden. A glimmer of hope. Even in the midst of judgment, there was still a glimmer of hope. Though Adam and Eve had disobeyed, God did not abandon them. He made garments of skin to clothe them, a sign that he still cared for them and would provide for their needs. And more importantly, within the curse on the serpent lay a promise that one day a descendant of Eve would come to crush the head of the serpent, overcoming sin and restoring what was lost. This promise was fulfilled many generations later in the person of Jesus Christ, the Savior who conquered sin and death on behalf of all humanity. Final thoughts. The story of Adam and Eve is not just an ancient tale of creation. It's a story that speaks to the human condition, our desires, our choices, our fall, and ultimately the promise of redemption. It reminds us of the brokenness that exists in the world, but also of God's unending grace and his plan to restore what was lost. Though we, like Adam and Eve, often stray from God's path, he continues to call out to us, offering forgiveness and new life. This story is the foundation of so much of what we believe about life, family, and our relationship with God. For more spiritual insights and ancient stories, don't forget to follow Nano Myths, where we bring to life the timeless tales that continue to shape our world.